Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. Today we are reading Meet Me There, a story written by myself, artwork done by winstermagic on Wattpad. Information in the description. It seems like there are some communication problems in the relationship, so I think it's important for me to ask, do you two want to stay together? Dr. Pakani looked over at Virgil and Deceit, watching as both sides looked at each other. Neither of them said anything, and the silence hung in the air for much too long. Dr. Pakani was hoping one of them would make the first move, but Virgil was pulling at the sleeves of his hoodie, and Deceit had a look of resolute anger in his eyes. A soft sigh left the doctor's lips. That's okay. Big decisions like this can be really hard. It reminds me of when Aang had to decide how he was going to end the threat that was the Fire Lord. In that case, he sought counsel from other people or his past selves, but ultimately it was his decision. I think the two of you need to take time apart to make that decision. What I'm going to suggest is that you both go back to your respective rooms, or maybe Logan's library. Either way, go to a place where you can sit and think by yourselves. Make a list of all of the things wrong with your relationship and all of the things right. Then really think about that list. If you both decide that you still want to be together, meet up in the imagination at noon on Saturday. If you both show up, then we can meet for another session on Sunday to see how we can move past this. If you don't, then it's a sign that this relationship has run its course. Deceit and Virgil finally broke eye contact, looking back at Pakani and nodding slowly. Bye, Emil. Bye, Virgil. Bye, Deceit. You two take care of each other. Both of them walked out of Pakani's office, looking at each other in silence. The relationship had been a good one a long time ago, but with Virgil being accepted by the light sides, Deceit had been dealing with the abandonment in unhealthy ways. They were two very hurt people who were hurting each other in return. Virgil looked at Deceit, biting his lip gently, wanting to say something, but he couldn't find the words. Rather than stammer out a sentence that made no sense, he turned and walked away. Why had it all gone wrong? Once upon a time he had relied on Deceit for everything. His sweet words would calm him down during anxiety attacks. His stories and dramatics always made Virgil happy, though he would roll his eyes with a sarcastic smirk. Deceit had known, right? He knew that he had made Virgil happy, right? Walking back to his room, Virgil opened the door, locking it behind him and immediately sitting down at his desk. He had never thought about breaking up with Dee before, but was that where the relationship was headed? After being together for so long, were they so broken that they couldn't be fixed? A sigh left his lips as he drummed his pencil on his desk. What were the good things about being in a relationship with Dee? Specifically with Dee. He didn't want to stay in a relationship just because he was lonely. He knew how unhealthy that was. Virgil also didn't want to disregard all of the wonderful things Dee had done for him in the past. He began to write down his list, 2 separate papers on his desk that outlined his feelings. That was how Virgil spent the next few days. He would occasionally go out of his room to eat, or he would take a break to think things through, but his mind never strayed far from Pakani's question. Did he want to stay with Deceit? Virgil remembered when they first got together. Deceit had always been so supportive of his insecurities and anxieties. He took things slow for Virgil's sake, but nowadays it felt like Deceit was taking advantage of Virgil's anxious nature. He intentionally flirted with Roman. Maybe Deceit didn't want this. Maybe he wouldn't show up when they were supposed to meet. Could Virgil handle that kind of rejection? There was a knock at his door, and he responded without thinking, "Come in." "Hey, kiddo. You've been spending a lot of time in your room. I just wanted to check in on you." Virgil turned to look at Patton, and he must have looked pretty stressed out because Patton's eyes were filled with concern. Dr. Pakani had suggested getting help from others in a roundabout way. "Yeah, Popstar, I'm okay. Deceit and I might be breaking up." Tears began to roll down Virgil's face, and he hadn't realized that he hated the thought this much. Sorry, I didn't mean to start crying. He didn't want to break up. He loved Deceit. But was this love really worth the pain it had caused him? Oh, Verge, it's okay. Patton engulfed him in a hug. Do you want to talk about it? Did he want to talk about it? He'd been trying to figure this out for the past few days and was supposed to go find Dee with a decision today. Slowly, Virgil nodded. He felt no closer to a conclusion. Maybe talking to Patton would help. I'm sure you've seen that things have been rocky with us, he said. We went to talk to Pakani, and he suggested we decide if we really want to be together. Well, do you? I don't know. I love him, I do, but things are getting toxic. We barely talk. We're almost always yelling when we do. He's been flirting with Roman, and he fell silent for a moment. I don't know if I trust him. Well, has he ever given you a reason not to trust him? Virgil didn't answer. Okay, better question. Why don't you trust him? Are you kidding me? He's Deceit. But that didn't always bug you, right? Patton was right. When did it start to bug Virgil? When did he stop trusting Deceit? Virgil curled up and brought his knees to his chest. I guess. When he showed up in the video, he was pretending to be you, and he was flirting with Roman, stroking his ego, and It hit Virgil like a ton of bricks. He had been jealous. He had lashed out when Dee asked if they were friends because he was jealous of all of the attention he had been giving Roman. Virgil knew how well Deceit and Roman got along. They were both actors, they were both dramatic, and Virgil had always had the doubt in the back of his mind that the only reason he and Deceit were together was because they had both been dark sides. It didn't help when, even after the video about accepting anxiety, the other seemed more apt to listen to Roman's ideas than his. It was never an issue with Deceit. Dee hadn't changed. The issue was Virgil's insecurities. He smacked his head with a groan. Well, it looks like you've realized something, kiddo. I'll leave you to think about it. Remember, I'm here for you if you need me, my sweet misunderstood shadowling. Virgil rolled his eyes, but gave Patton a gentle nod as he was wrapped up in a hug. When the door was closed again, his thoughts began to spiral. Had this really all been his fault because of petty jealousy for a man who already had a boyfriend? He knew Roman wouldn't do anything with Deceit because he was helplessly in love with Logan. Yet, somehow, Virgil had gotten jealous of their meaningless flirting. He had convinced himself that Deceit was just settling with him. He felt like an idiot. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't want me back. But there was only one way to find out. Pushing himself off the bed, he looked at his clock. 12:03 p.m. His head dropped. He was already late. What if Deceit thought he didn't want to be with him? Virgil scrambled out of his room, running quickly to the imagination and throwing the door open. He saw a beautiful meadow, flowers drifting in the wind, and no Deceit. He had really screwed up this time. Why hadn't he noticed the time? His breath caught in his throat as he sunk to his knees. He should have paid more attention. He should have been more careful. About time you got here. Looking up, he saw a hand being held out to him, and Virgil recognized it at once. Quickly pulling himself up, he looked at the black-clad man. You're still here? No, I'm back in my room. Deceit rolled his eyes and gently pulled Virgil closer, hesitating as if he was afraid Virgil would pull away from him. I knew you would get lost in your thoughts and anxieties. I knew you would overthink this, so I figured I would wait. Virgil felt guilt and love bear into him almost immediately as he flung himself around Deceit, holding him tightly. I'm sorry, Danger Noodle. I got jealous, and I got insecure. I should have had more faith in you. I'm sorry too, Thunderstorm. I should have asked you what was wrong. You shouldn't have to ask. I should have just told you. Promise to communicate better from now on? Virgil nodded, and the two clung to each other in the spring breeze, a promise that the world would change, and a promise that they would too. Thank you again for stopping by. One more time, this was called Meet You There, written by myself, artwork done by Winstermagic on Wattpad. I hope you have a great day.